from a symbolic perspective, even from like a cultural perspective, like locking your doors to keep bad spirits out, which really doesn't make sense. Think of like a child, and they would lock their door to keep the vampires or the ghost out and things like that. Things that, if they were real, I'm not saying they are or aren't, but if they were real, would have no real issue going in. But even okay, from even the vampire perspective, vampires can't come into your house unless what? Do you know that lore? So a
Mm-mm.
vampire can't come into your house unless it's invited. It can't cross that doorway. So doorways have a lot of
Oh,
significance.
that's cool.
There's a certain
I
level
like
of,
that.
of I grew up watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so that was a
Oh
big
my
thing.
goodness.
But
Now it's not so cool.
but there's
I
a
guess
certain
that's where you tapped into your feminine side.
no, no. There you go. I watched Buffy for a different reason, but we're not
I
getting into
get it. I get it.
that. But there's a so culturally doorways have or it's like I can't remember the name of the show, but where they would put salt across the doorway to keep demons from crossing through it.
Yeah.
What was that? It was really popular. I can't remember the name of it, but
I
that's
don't
a
know the show, but I've heard of that
yeah,
lore before.
but that's a belief. And so the idea that these doorways, why? Because you can't cross if okay, let's do this. If you have a doorway and um Chet, Chet, the Hebrew symbol, represents life, sin, and like a door, shaped like a door. You can't cross into life or out of life if you are a spiritual creature without permission. You can't transition without permission. And so it's likewise at certain mystery schools, you can't transition through that door without permission. You have to be invited. Doors
Interesting.
have they're interesting because when you're in a doorway, if you think about it, your past is behind you and your future is in front of you. No matter which way you're going through the door. Like you have things that are behind you and things that are in front of you. And it's the same thing like when you're going through the fraternity, you have things behind you, earthly things, and you have something in front of you, which is celestial. And you're transitioning from earthly to celestial, but you have to have permission to pass through that door. You have to have permission to ascend into the celestial, receive knowledge, return back to what is earthly, process that knowledge, and then you can go again. It's almost like what you read about sometimes in the Bible, where people would ascend the mountaintop to speak with God. He
Right.
ascended the mountaintop to speak with God, and then he returned to earth with information, with knowledge that he was supposed to share with the Israelites, I believe, with or the Jewish, I don't remember, with his people.
Oh, they were Israelites. They just weren't they didn't believe in just one God at that time.
But it's the
That was
same
the
concept as like Jacob's ladder, or when Jesus was on the mountaintop of the desert and he was wrestling with the devil, not wrestling physically, but like trying to be tempted by the devil and things
right.
like that. But he came back down with knowledge. Not saying the devil taught him anything, but he grew from that experience. And so
Right.
anytime you see somebody biblically, in fact, or even mythologically, when gods are imparting knowledge onto them, they are ascending. They are traveling from the earthly to the celestial. I mean, you never see like, yeah, God appeared in this guy's bedroom and woke him up and taught him all these magical, all these amazing things, and like go back to sleep, talk about in the morning, right? It's you met God where he was in a celestial environment and came back down
Right.
with new information.
So now another thought on the celestial side of the divine when it comes to the pillars. Do you know what the metal of the sun is?
Not a fan. Gold, maybe. I don't know.
No, it's brass.
Okay.
Do you know what? So the pillars were brazen, right? Do you know what the metal of the moon is?
No.
It's zinc. So the sun and the moon is what makes the brazen pillars. The or not brass, copper.
Copper,
Copper
copper and zinc and brass. Okay.
is the sun of is the sun metal,
Dude,
and zinc is a moon metal.
that's
Isn't that interesting?
interesting. That is
Isn't that
interesting.
cool? That's just
Because
weird
I
ass
was gonna
shit
say,
in
because I was gonna
alchemy, you
say
know?
brass is an alloy. That's weird that the sun would be an alloy. But no, that's yeah. Again, the moon, pillars, right?
Yep.
You got what? Copper, zinc. I don't know.
Zinc. Yep. Zinc is the moon, and then copper is this. Anyways, I
I
just thought
always
that was kind of
wondered,
cool.
I always wondered why brass.
The master mason in the group was not, you probably already know this. He wasn't a master stonesmith. He was a metal clergy. He was an alchemist, basically,
Hmm.
because he made the brazen pillars. That was his forte. That's what he did, was he worked with metals.
Well, where did early alloys come from? It came from alchemy. It wasn't simply alchemists
Yeah.
worked with metals all the time. It wasn't like
Yeah.
some hermit with a pointy hat running around the woods picking mushrooms and stuff. They worked a lot with metals and urine, but a lot of metals too, right? Like those, let's not glorify it too much. I mean, they were boiling piss in there, but they were also doing
Right.
a lot of stuff with metals,
Well,
and
that's because they were
especially
trying to figure
mercury.
out the chemical makeup.
Yeah, it was a very, you could
And
say it's very
urine was
rudimentary.
distilled water at that time. It's not like it's, that was your distilled water. Everything else was putrid and bad
Mhm.
for you back then.
Yeah, yeah.
You drink beer, you get distilled water.
There you go.
That's funny. But
But
that
that,
was one of the things that I honed in on recently, was that.
so what's the significance of that though? Like let's explore it a little bit deeper. You got the sun and moons and their brazen pillars, right? What
Well,
is
it's equilibrium. The
like
sun and the
balance?
moon,
Yeah.
that creates equilibrium.
So
It creates
why
balance.
not have one pillar that's copper and another one that's zinc? Sun and moon. And people are like, oh, well, there's balance there. Are you saying
Well,
that just
because one they would both melt. They're stronger together. Their strength.
so you're saying that symbolically combining the sun and moon creates that unity that because it represents the importance of the unity of strength, wisdom, and beauty.
Yeah, I would think so.
And that's probably another reason why
It's
the high priestess is there because beauty, right?
right.
A female, beautiful.
A little easier on the eyes.
Hmm.
Yep.
But even
So
even go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but even if you look at the lovers, let me put my fingers in the places there, right? You got the male and the female, and you have a creature of beauty in the middle.
So just real quick, why do you think it's important to understand or to contemplate symbolism? Why do you think it's important?
If you take everything at face value, then you never really grow from it. But if you explore, like, okay, this looks like this, is there a reason for it? Like the pillars, right? Is there a reason for it? There's a deeper reason behind everything in Freemasonry. And honestly, even in life, there's a deeper reason behind everything. Why did that butterfly land on me? Things like that. The universe throws things at you too. And Freemasonry, again, we're doing the whole macro and macrocosm thing, but Freemasonry is a microcosm of life. And everything that, anytime there's a pattern, anytime that there's something that seems strange, you could always chalk it up to, well, this is an old ritual. And so people said things differently, did things differently. Sure, also, but no, if that makes sense. It's different because it's intentional. And if you look past this bias, like, oh, we're just a service organization with some silly rituals, and get past that bias and really dive into the rituals and question why instead of just making assumptions, you learn a lot. And as you learn, I hate to say it makes you wiser, but well, I mean, the whole purpose we said about life earlier, and I do believe this still, is to ascend this ladder, this Jacob's ladder, this Kabbalistic tree, and get closer to emanation. And you can't do that if you don't dive deeper, if you don't explore the symbolism, if you don't go where the rabbit hole goes and learn and grow from it and reflect on it.
You know what I think creates wisdom?
Listening to your wife.
No, definitely not. That doesn't even create balance. I think open-mindedness, openness to other realities.
Well,
Because your reality is the construct of your mind, what your mind tells you reality is. So if you're completely open to all different concepts, then you're willing to contemplate any other reality and apply it to whatever the question is at hand and find the best possible solution at the time.
Well,
That's wisdom.
If wisdom comes from openness, and the enemy of openness is ego, and ego also prevents you from ascending, then really the enemy is ego.
Oh yeah.
Life. The enemy of salvation, so to speak.
Well,
even from a strictly Christian perspective, the enemy's ego. Have
you ever heard the acronym EGO? Edging God out.
Interesting.
You like that?
And
that's one of my favorite ones.
I'm trying not to go down this whole Christian thing tonight, but I guess that's where my mind is. Whenever the term Satan is referred to in the Bible, it's not talking about a specific entity. It is a term for it. It means enemy, the enemy. And so when Jesus is in the desert, going back to that, being tempted by the enemy's ego, man. That's ego.
Yeah.
That's ego.
I agree. I agree. And I think that it's just like when who was it that was struggling with the person in the forest? Was it Abraham or
Sure.
Moses?
Sure.
Probably
Moses
got hurt with their side, got stabbed with their side or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he realized he was struggling with himself.
Wow. Yeah, man. That's deep. But even to elaborate more on the first point, right? What does Satan do? He promised Jesus all kinds of things, right? What does your ego do? Your ego tells you, hey, don't go down this path. Look at all these things.
Well, and it tells us, and it also tells us we're capable of so much more than we are. It makes all kinds of empty promises.
Yeah, I know. It fractured my spine because my ego told me I could do things I couldn't a few months ago.
So. Here, watch this. Yeah, believe me, I get it. I get it. I've seen stars on many occasions because of my ego.
I feel like I'm learning a lot from this conversation tonight. Even
without even going into it. We barely even dipped into the Jachin and Boaz. So, one of the things that I like about the pillars when we're looking at Boaz, well, one of the things that's real interesting is that, that phrase, in this house I am established, or whatever, Boaz and Jachin. Did you know that those are Kabbalistic terms?
No.
Yeah, those words, Yakin, is what it's really is.
That in strength I will establish. That in strength I will establish this mine house forever, which always sounded weird, even from like a biblical quote. It sounds weird. That in strength I will establish this mine house forever. Like, what does that mean? So please do elaborate.
His strength is Boaz. Establishment is Jachin. And so when the definition per se, I wouldn't say definition, but the characteristic of those two words One is his strength, and the other is will establish. So in his strength he will establish. And those are Kabbalistic terms.
Let's see. Which one is this? What? Okay, so strength is,
Boaz is strength.
yeah, well, I'm just looking at the Tree of Life. So Geburah is strength. Oh,
Boaz.
Boaz, according to the Tree of Life.
Oh, here. Yeah.
But
Let
where's
me
establishment
let
on
me
it? I
hold
just
on just a
because
second.
sometimes the terms don't line up, right? Like because it's translated from Hebrew. So I was just wondering where establishment would fall under on that.
Oh, I've got a different.
Well, if you don't have
Um,
it, it's fine. I was just
hold on. I've got a different one that shows a better picture. I just got to find the picture.
gotcha.
It has different words. I have one that has multiple meanings of the same Sephiroth, and it's really helpful for when you're having these kind of conversations,
Yeah.
because then you can tie in the words to each other. So let's look at Boaz for a second while I'm trying to look at this stuff. You know, Boaz was considered a pillar of strength in his community, and he was a just and upright man. And have you ever thought about the fact that, you know, one of our things is taking care of the widows and orphans? And what was it that Boaz did? He took care of the widow and orphan,
Hmm.
and actually two widows, but one was could also be considered an orphan because it was the daughter-in-law of a widow.
Let's see. Huh. Okay. That is interesting.
Okay, so the number five Sephiroth, the one that let me golly, let me put my glasses on so I can see this. That's strength. That's Geburah,
Yeah.
the one that's on the Boaz side in the middle. That's strength. That's
Yeah.
equated to strength. And then the one on the right hand side, of course, the top one is wisdom, and wisdom is considered establishment.
Got you. Okay. That all right. That makes sense.
Yeah, because establishment. So now, getting off the pillars a little bit, if you look at the one of the things that I find the most interesting about the fellowcraft degree is the stairway. And it has all those symbols on the stairway, and it goes EA, fellowcraft, master, and then it gives you all the different pillars through time as they built upon each other. And then it gives you all the different liberal arts and sciences as they build upon each other, going all the way up to astrology. And if you think about it, you know, on a micro sense, that's what we as a man, that's what me as a man has to study for me to get closer to God. That's me building my intellect to be able to get to God. I had to go through the initiatic degrees of the EA, fellowcraft, and masters, and then I had to understand the complexity of the different of being of building myself up as a stronger and stronger pillar and more ornate and more capable as I went along. And then I had to educate myself on the liberal arts and sciences. So on a micro version, that's what we're looking at. On a macro version, that's the journey of man. Man was very fundamental, rudimental in the beginning, and all he understood was building things. He didn't understand how he got there really. He did to an extent to where they measured with ropes with knots on them, and that's how they measured out their cubits and all that. And then they were able to build more ornate things by doing that. But eventually they started really understanding and educating themselves and becoming more and more intellectual and less rudimentary. So on a micro version, that's man. On a macro vantage point, that's mankind over time, and that's establishment. So the wisdom has been developed over from the beginning of time to now. That wisdom has been developed.
I also want to add, going back to this idea, like you had to ascend to receive knowledge from God, right? You don't just go uninvited; you have to be invited. And so we're talking about this winding stairway. You have to be invited, and then you're taking allegorically through this ascending metaphor that ends in astrology, which is knowledge of the celestial, right? So it's not given, it's earned. You travel up this stairway till you receive this knowledge. Not that you receive it, but you learn it. And then what do you do when you get to the top of the stairway? Eventually you have to descend it. But also it made me think of the allegory of the Tower of Babylon, right? Because these people wanted to be as gods and communicate with God, but they wanted to take, granted, you're building a giant tower, which is a lot of work, but they wanted to take a shortcut and they weren't invited. And so there's no shortcuts to achieving this knowledge. There's no shortcuts to receiving communication from God. It has to be earned. You have to work for it. And how do you work for it is you travel up, right? It's the same thing with Jacob's ladder, right? You have to go rung at a time. You have to take a step at a time on this winding staircase of life. Then you receive this knowledge. I'm not saying if you study these things, God's going to come talk to you. That's not in any mean what I'm saying, but you will
Right.
receive information. You will receive knowledge.
You receive the blessing of God is basically it, which is knowledge.
Yeah. And then you'll
Yes.
come back and share it with everybody. And it may be like the allegory in the cave. In fact, I know it is, but it takes a little bit of time. I mean, it's just like any great teacher. It's the same parable. Like they have this divine information, but it goes against what everybody saw. They were staring at the cave wall their whole life, so that goes against what they're saying. But you receive this knowledge and you share it.
So, yep, I I, I agree. I
And
agree.
it's just like Moses when he came down, though. I mean, they're worshiping a cow. So everything he learned, I mean, he shattered it, right? This is useless. But it's part of it. It's a whole lather, rinse, repeat of the human experience.
Right. So, now I have the stairway in front of me right now, so I can read it a little bit better. But if you look at the different liberal arts and sciences, they
Mhm.
build on each other.
Oh,
There's no
absolutely.
other way. There's no way to get to one without the other. So the
There
very
is
first
no
thing
there
is
is no
grammar.
shortcut. Yeah.
The very first thing is grammar. So when God said, "Let there be light," God spoke the thought of creation into existence, right?
Hmm.
So grammar being the very first thing. And then once you have another brother, then you can experience rhetoric, which is both of you utilizing grammar,
Hmm.
the art of combat through words. And then logic builds upon that, and then
Which is
because
also
then
partial master, which may add or detract logic from your logic.
because
It
then you
is.
can because then you can start, because of the back and forth with rhetoric,
Mhm.
you can begin to reason and understand with logic. With logic, then you can understand arithmetic. You can't understand arithmetic without logic.
Mhm.
If you're incapable of logic, you can't understand math. And then geometry, you have to understand arithmetic first. And then
Yeah, there's no
music is an abstract version of geometry.
absolutely. Can you
And
understand
many
music without
people,
geometry? Yes. Can you understand it at a esoteric level? No, not without it.
mm-mm, no. And you can understand it to some degree, but can you really harmonize, and can you be a master of an instrument necessarily? No. I watch my
You're
daughter,
not
and
making.
she knows notes, and she knows, you know, what order they go in. But if she doesn't do it in time, then it sounds like crap.
You won't be the next tool unless you understand arithmetic and geometry. I'm just saying.
So, anyways, and then astronomy is basically just the next building point upon that. I mean, I really I love that point of of uh, of understanding.
Yeah.
I truly believe that that's the development of mankind, and that's basically the history of mankind in their development. And here we are today, just expounding upon all of that at this point.
But I really think what you said reinforces the concept that there are no shortcuts. You can't jump into astrology unless you have an understanding of geometry
Right.
and so on and so forth all the way down the road. I mean, you can't even study an arithmetic book unless you understand grammar. So it all starts at the very basics,
That's right.
which is
That's
why
right.
reading, writing, and arithmetic are the things that the Masons founded as the basis for modern education when they founded it here in Texas, because everything else follows. That's why you learn those things first in life. You
Yeah.
can't you can't jump into trigonometry unless you understand these basic things, right? You can never be a doctor unless you understand these basic things. And that's how education works. It's scaffolded. You learn a little bit every year and you build on it. It's the same thing.
Right.
You can't jump to this. So these people will say, well, if you have some great secret, why don't you just share it and make the whole world better? Because you can't. Yeah, we said this before. It's experiment. It's experiential. Like you have to experience it,
Right.
right? And it's the whole. What's the Freemasonry is a like a progressive science. It's not
Well, and
progressive.
and and you'll never appreciate it either.
Yeah, well, it's not progressive as in like what we modernly call progressive, right? It's not left or right or conservative or liberal by any means,
Right.
but it's progressive, meaning you have to progress through it. And even if you progress through it and receive like some divine understanding through your studies and you really feel like you're one with God and stuff, right? You're where you need to be in your life. You're where you're supposed to be. And Dennis goes up to the mountain and comes back down, or Moses, not compared with Moses, but Moses goes to the mountain and comes back down. These people are where they're supposed to be in their life, right? They're making cows out of gold and doing their thing. It's I came out of the cave. Here's reality. But these are where those people in that cave are where they're supposed to be in their life, right?
Yes.
Their decisions led them there, and their decisions are what keep them there.
I agree.
That's why I was saying like if life is like what I was proposing, where it's you're supposed to have these experiences, and ultimately one day one incarnation will you'll be Jesus or the Buddha or insert whatever that ageless Messiah is in there, because I think there's just one in age, and eventually you'll get to that point, but
So
it
now that
takes a
we've
lot of
lost
trial and
Billy
error.
Graham, who do we have next?
But it takes a lot of trial and error, and it's not for everybody, right? So Moses comes down from the mountain and everyone's like, doing their heathen thing. Well, that's because the the ascension that you received, right? The closer the the emanation that you're at is not for them, right? You can't reach the top of the Kabbalistic tree and go take it to the masses. It's not something you can bottle, right, and sell in the vending machine. It's something you
Right.
achieve, and that's the thing. That's really the thing. Enlightenment's achieved. It's a reward, and it's not something that you can just pass to somebody else.
Well, and when he comes down from the mountain, um, you have to also realize that those people were in a chaotic state.
Mhm.
So they that was emblematic of chaos and lack of understanding. There was no logic to what they were doing, obviously, or they wouldn't have been making a calf out of gold.
Mhm.
So, there's no logic. So how would they be able to comprehend something as simple as 10 commandments? I mean, really, how would they be able to, you know, apply logic to those 10 commandments and see where that would create good orderly direction to keep them from having fights and arguments over stuff?
I will say this too, and this is interesting to me. I don't know if we talked about it here, right? But the symbol for Jesus was the fish, right?
Hmm.
And that was during the age of Pisces. So the symbol for Jesus was the Messiah of that age.
Hmm.
What was the age that came before Pisces?
Bull.
Taurus. And
Yeah,
these
the
people had
bull.
a golden
And
calf there,
right,
so they're
and
worshiping
that's
the
the
age of Taurus.
right. And that's who the god was Baal, I think. Bal. I think that was the god,
Yeah.
if I remember right.
Let me look that up. What
Yeah, that's as soon as you started saying what was before, I knew exactly what it was. And I knew
Baal's cult
exactly
animal
why
was the
they,
bull.
yes. And I knew
Yeah.
exactly who they were worshiping also.
See
So
what
it
I'm
was
talking about?
logical
See
for
what I'm
them,
talking about? Like once you start studying astrology,
right?
there's no such thing as coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence.
Right. Well, and that was one of three gods that was worshipped by the Israelites during their nomadic period. One being, the god of wrath, which was which was Yahweh, and the other one being the god of pleasantness, I guess, if you want to put it that way. It was so you had one that was the weather god of wrath and lightning and thunder and harsh storms from the north, and that was Yahweh. And then you had the other god that was who was that? Bel, El,
No,
El,
yeah, 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 yeah.
El, and he was the god of the south that was your more older looking, kind god, because he was the god of creation
Mhm.
he gave rain, but it fed the farms. The other god, you know, created floods and tore apart the farms, whereas the one down south nurtured the farms. And then you have in the middle, you've got Ball, and
Yeah.
it's just the cow.
Mhm. But
So,
the age of Taurus though, it was from 4300 to 2150 BC. So that's in that time frame, right?
oh
What's
yeah.
what's also interesting to me about that is excuse me. There are some people, and we kind of hinted at this, so I know you're interested in it, that suggest like the Great Sphinx originally had a feline appearance. It was feline because it was
Hmm.
pointed towards Leo when it was the age of Leo, right? But
Right.
the issue is that would have had to been 10,000, 8,000 BC, which is they say is way too early or late, depending on how you want to look at your timeline. But it's this whole ancient alien concept where people are trying to push back. And honestly, it's not even an ancient alien thing because you watched Ancient Apocalypse, didn't you? Did you finish that yet?
I
They
hadn't finished it yet.
they found
I
footprints
hadn't watched
and
it since, really.
they found
I
footprints in
need to.
White Sands, New Mexico that
Oh, I did see
blow what we
that.
know about the timeline like out of the water. So
Oh
really,
yeah.
that's not even too that's it went from like 10 years ago to just being absurd to like, oh, okay. If we were over in North America that long ago, maybe things
Right.
were going on.
Well,
Who knows?
maybe Bigfoot did exist.
Mhm.
But going back to well, no, I don't
Mhm.
need to go back there. Never mind. Never mind.
But you also have so you have the age of Gemini, right? Which was before the age of Taurus. What's the lore for the founding of Rome?
Right.
Romulus and Remus, the twins, right? So
Right.
it's
So you realize why astrology is so important, don't you?
going.
All of these groups were nomads. All of them.
Mhm.
Every civilization was nomadic um in the beginning. And so they relied heavily on the stars. And they relied heavily on the their all of their understanding and contemplation of existence was based off of those stars. So to discount astrology just because it's been proven different as far as well to
Well, it's
it's
just kind
one
of the
thing
same
it's one
reason
thing to discount fortune tellers. It's a whole nother thing to discount astrology.
it's discounted for the same reason we discount alchemy now, right? Now we have chemistry. We have something better. Astrology, that's old fashioned. We have astronomy now,
Astronomy,
right? We
yes.
have which is we've gone to this approach where it has to be based strictly on what you can observe and
Right.
strictly what you can see, but not what you can experience or what you can feel. And so we've shifted away from the esoteric to the exoteric. Alchemists were practicing chemistry. Astrologists were practicing astronomy, right? But
Right.
now astronomers don't practice astrology, and chemists don't practice alchemy. So
Right.
we've it's really almost the spiritual side of the practice, and that says a lot about us as a human race. I think we moved away from the spiritual side of things, even religiously. We moved away from the spiritual side of things.
Right. You're right. And that's telling. That's very telling.
Even mathematics had a spiritual side to it, right? The geometrica and all that stuff,
Well,
and
yeah, that's how that was part of the mystic side of that was the magic side of Kabbalah was
mhm.
geometria or whatever that
Yeah, I
is,
think you're right,
where they
geometry.
add up the numbers and it matches or coincides and becomes godly or what have you. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the magical side, and it's discouraged because they fear it because they believe that it can make craziness happen that they can't that
That
they're
applies
afraid
to
of.
any of the things we talked about tonight, right?
Yes.
That's why Mackie suggested, hey, you need to like get yourself checked out. Like you need to make yourself right mentally before you do any kind of esoteric studies. Because you're absolutely right. Because if you're not guarded mentally, like if you don't have the mental fortitude, you'll start your imagination will run away with you, right? And you'll go crazy. You'll see things
Yeah,
that
it's
aren't
not
there.
good to
You'll
do
see
this stuff
patterns that
by
aren't
yourself
necessarily
either.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, you'll become a tin hatter if you a flat earther if you just sit and watch conspiracy
That's why
theories by
every
yourself.
master should have an apprentice.
And every apprentice should have a master.
Yeah,
And every master should be an apprentice to
exactly.
someone.
Exactly.
It's a circle of life.
All right, we got a hour and a half, 2 hours. I think we wrap it up. This is already information overload. I may make this a two-part, man, just because there's so much information. I think when you
It's
throw so
difficult
much
to do that
information,
though,
uh,
because it all bounces back and forth so poorly that
I don't think it's poor. I think if you just
no, I
if
think it's great information, but I think it wasn't organized, and so it's hard to
it's
make it
just
a
a
this is
it's
part
just a
one, and then adding on that is part two.
it's just an esoteric discussion. I think if it's just introduced as part one, and then like an hour long, and then we do a part two, and it just jumps right into it. And
Okay.
I could do they're called cards, but it's like part one here, click part one, that kind of thing. And I can put a link in the description too. So if they're watching, like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Well, let's do a recap real quick,
Okay.
and then we'll close it down, and we can talk for a minute after.
Yeah. You'll start?
No, you're the one who wanted to shut it down,
Okay. So we
Mr.
talked about
Naysayer.
a lot. We talked about a lot tonight, right? And we were going to come here and talk about the pillars and just go from there. But that's not really what happened, right? And we tried to kind of steer back. I don't think we need to, but we tried. I think the best conversations are the ones that flow naturally, right? And sometimes you may have an agenda. I'm not I mean like an agenda, but like you like this is what I want to talk about. This is how we want to do it. And that's just not how I mean, you're where you're supposed to be, right? You're and the conversations are what they're supposed to be. And if you try to force it, sometimes it comes across forced. And so I think this was the conversation that needed to be based off where we're at. I feel like I've learned a lot. Um, hopefully you learned something too, Dennis, because
Yeah.
I feel like if we gain something from it, someone else will. And inevitably, whenever we do an esoteric conversation, somebody will hop on and like, well, you didn't talk about this and this and this. This was, in fact, we had an esoteric conversation about Kabbalah and Freemasonry. And someone that actually it was a creator and I respected him quite a bit. And he's like, well, you guys did this at the service. And it's like, well, okay. I mean, we talked about it based off where we're at, right? And it's almost like gatekeeping, I think. Like if you're too afraid to share what you know because you're not at someone else's level and then they criticize you for not being at their level, you're esoteric gatekeeping, right?
So
And
now you got to tell me who it was that said that when we get off the air,
I have to
because
find it. I have to find it.
okay.
If I can even remember. He's a Mason. That made it even worse. But yeah. And so I enjoy these conversations because to me, and this is what I would suggest to anybody watching this, don't approach this like two experts on the topic teaching you as much as it is two apprentices, right? Two two
Yeah.
two wayfarers on the journey, this esoteric journey,
Two
discussing
conversation starters.
their understanding and learning from one another. And if you gain anything from it, wonderful. And if you don't, namaste, man. I mean, if this is beneath you, what I would ask instead of criticizing, hop on and share your thoughts. Not hop on here, but I mean, we have comments. You might mention, hey, you might look into this, you might look into that. But um, I mean, either comment. I'll be honest, like the comment I talked about, I remember it because I was like, that's kind of crappy, but it didn't hurt my feelings or anything, right?
Are you talking
Um,
about the guy that said, I'm not going to listen anymore because you misrepresented this or whatever?
no, I don't think so. Um,
Okay.
I can find it. I can I'll
No,
look.
that's okay.
No, I mean I don't really mind, and I honestly,
So then I'll start doing mine.
oh, I could tell you who it was now. I remember it just now. Nematon, the
Oh,
Nematon.
yeah.
He's got some good esoteric. Uh, yeah, he's got some interesting esoteric stuff in his channels. I mean, his channel's a little bit bigger than ours, like 5,000 bigger, but not that size is everything.
Well,
But
and he may be further along in the journey or whatever, but by no means is he an authority. And
no,
here's
and
here's
it goes back to
here's
the
what
gatekeeping.
bothers me about anybody that wants to talk trash to me. I could give two shits.
Yeah.
And the reason why is not because I'm on a different journey or anything else, but because this is speculative.
Mhm.
And I get to think whatever the hell I want to think.
We can
And,
speculate how
and
we feel, right?
that's exactly right. You don't get to tell me what I get to believe and what I don't get to believe and what I get to think and what I don't get to think. just because I think one thing today doesn't mean I'm going to think it tomorrow. It
Well,
doesn't, and nothing makes you the authority on anything.
well, if you're on an esoteric journey, right, and you've been on the journey for a while, really, your journey is going to come at a standstill unless you're willing to help other people on theirs. And as a master mason, if I'm teaching like an EA or a fellowcraft, and they come to practice one night, they're like, "Hey, I was really studying about the square, and I know it has like an accepted meaning, but I was thinking this might be how it applies to me in my life." And you say, "That's stupid, and I'm really disappointed that you came to that conclusion," right? They're not coming back. They're done. They will never share with you again, and they probably won't even answer their phone, right? And so
Well,
you've crushed them.
something interesting that you just said, though, the accepted meaning. So, here's my thought is that people that talk down to other people about how they believe or think in uh in an esoteric interpretation, they are free but accepted. So they're only going to accept what other people have accepted previously and decided that that's what it should be, right? Instead of coming up with their own thoughts and opinions, um, they're only going to read somebody else's work and accept their work as the authority
Mhm.
instead of reading this person's work and then reading this person, this person, this person, and this person's work, and then thinking, well, I kind of fit somewhere in the middle on how I believe in all this. I don't quite think that the same way as this other guy. It's kind of like how I feel about, go ahead.
Well, you said it yourself. If I read 3 or 4 books about the same topic, they're all going to have different approaches. They're all going to give you different interpretations. So for any one of them to say, "Well, no, you're wrong. This is the right interpretation." No, because there's people just as well versed as you, just as authoritative as you, with a different opinion. And so I'm sorry if you disagree, but you said it exactly. It's speculative. It's all speculative until we're dead, right?
Yeah.
It's all speculative. And now you can speculate with better and better information until you're really confident about it. But I mean,
But how
you're
confident can you really be?
really can't.
I mean,
I
all
get
you
your
can be
point.
confident is how you feel about
Mhm.
it. I would not feel confident enough to tell somebody else, this is how you better feel, or you're not going to make it into eternity. I'm not
Yeah,
that guy.
no, same here. I agree.
It's probably why I'm going to hell, because I'm not that guy. I
Well,
don't believe I'm going to hell.
aren't all religions speculative then? And there's
Every one of them.
how dare you? I got a book. I got a book.
And this is how it means to me.
Yeah.
You know, that's
You
reality. That
speculate, you speculate you're going to hell. People speculate
even
you're
in
going to hell.
yeah, even in the same within the same book, there's many different interpretations on what that book is actually saying.
It just goes to show that the people that created Freemasonry had enough of a what's the opposite of having an ego, right? That they acknowledged that what they were doing is speculative. There's no religion that considers itself speculative or college. Well, this is
Uh
speculative geometry because we still have to learn some things, right? It might change. I mean, acknowledging that you don't know everything from the start and that you might be wrong and things might change is that's very
that's healthy.
opposite of ego, right?
That's healthy
Yeah.
in my opinion. You know, that's those are the things that cause divorce and cause wars and causes calamity. It's people digging in on their personal beliefs and thinking that, you know, everybody else is wrong except for them.
Mhm.
Just
Well, we went
saying.
off on another tangent, didn't we?
We
That
did.
was like that was a terrible wrap up.
Damn it. That was a terrible wrap up.
Well, go ahead and do your piece then, and we'll cut it.
Okay. So I gotta say, we did bounce back and forth all around throughout this episode, but I really did enjoy it
Mhm.
because it we talk often about how our favorite thing to do is when we get together at the hotel after the events and just hang out and drink scotch and talk Freemason. That right there is talking Freemason.
Mhm.
Just letting it go where it goes, being organic. You know, one of the biggest oxymorons out there in the world is the title of morals and dogma, because there's not really a dogma um to it if you think about it. If you allow yourself to roam free with your thoughts after reading uh a passage by Albert Pike, then you're not really believing in a dogma. You're believing in a realm of possibilities. And I think that's why our conversations are so wonderful when we all get together and talk, whether it be you and me or with a bunch of us or what have you, is because we allow ourselves to just let it go. And I have very specific thoughts on how I feel about things. I do.
Mhm.
I have very specific beliefs based off of stuff that I've learned. And for me, it makes sense. It's logical to me. And so I believe certain things. I can assure you it's probably not what the rest of the world believes. But I'm open to interpretation. So if I learn something tomorrow that's a little bit different, then man, I could very well change my mind. If I now do I am I going to take shortcuts on my moral compass or my ethical values, my character? No, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I am open to believe is what's going to happen when I die. Because I don't want to believe that I'm going to be confined to hell. I don't want to believe that. I've done too many screwed up things in my life to where if that was a reality, which I don't think it is, if that was a reality, then I would be screwed.
Mhm.
And I might as well just not even enjoy life at all. Or I might as well not even be moral or ethical at all. I might as well just go out and have a great freaking time. Yeah, screw it.
Yeah,
Let's have an orgy tomorrow. But
I'm flattered, Dennis, but
not with you. I was not talking about full of men. But no, in all seriousness, the beauty of Freemasonry is that we are free thinking gentlemen that contemplate the mysteries of life and death. That's the beauty of Freemasonry. And anywhere where I am, that's a safe place for other people to talk about those things,
Mhm.
because I'm not going to judge you based off of that. There was a time when I would have, and I'm ashamed of that person, to be quite frank. And today is a different day. And today I am better than I was yesterday. And I think that's what we were talking about earlier today, earlier this evening, is that we got to a certain point that we let go of life before, and even though we were unsure of what was to come, we knocked on that door and we walked through. We asked permission and they let us in. And There's no turning back now. I don't want to be any other way.
You can't turn back.
Yeah, once
Once you taken the blue pill,
the blue pill.
once you taken that,
Yeah,
there's no turning back. We've been blue pilled, man.
yeah. You
No
can't
going back.
unthink what I've thunk, and that's the cool thing. And I hope that others will join us, in doing that. I
One of us. One of us.
That's so funny. That's a that's so fun. I hope that others will do that. And did you have any other thoughts? Because
That's the. I was just thinking as you said that I hope others will do that, but that's the whole significance of why we don't invite people, right? That's because Freemasonry is supposed to be an esoteric. Freemasonry is supposed to be an esoteric garden, right? And you can't invite people to that because they're like, oh, what is
they
this?
wouldn't get it.
They don't get it. You have to come. You have to be ready. You have to know who to ask, know where to look. And so that's why I mean Freemason Freemasonry really like not to speak badly of it because we're I mean it's Masonic improvement. We like Freemasonry, obviously, right? But it's a shell of what it was intended to be. And that is like we say like you're supposed to be well rounded, and that's a very nice and political approach, right? But really Freemasonry is supposed to be, at least in my heart, education and esoteric studies. And that's why we don't invite people because I mean you have to come. You have to. I mean, if you just invite someone to like a esoteric drum circle, they're like, "Well, this is stupid," and you waste your time. So I think in today's age we have to be a little more accepting of other viewpoints, but I think we should always push because education is important. You want to study esoterics? Hey, you're interested in that? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Because the thing is, even you can pull it out of people, right? Like, well, I read about, I'm a Gemini. Okay, well, I mean, people I used to think birth signs were stupid, but I don't necessarily think that now. So it's like, I'm a Gemini. Oh, what does that mean? How does that relate to you in your life?
Right.
Is that
Yeah.
accurate? Do you feel like that's accurate? What is it? What's the significations of that? And you start pulling that out, and they're like, huh. And you had a conversation. It was an interesting conversation. It's like that's interesting. I wonder. My wife's a Taurus. I wonder if she matches that. Oh, okay. Well, what is this really? What is the sun sign? What is the moon sign? What is this all? And it leads down this whole. You can kind of pull it out, and then they'll come back and you'll have more conversations. But this idea that it's supposed to be like this superficial, like, hey, we're going to fry fish and we're going to give it away. People will like us and more people will enjoy us. So we can fry more fish. Talk about a pyramid scheme, man. I mean, you don't accomplish anything. Where's the growth from that? You know, how do you improve it yourself? That is a road that leads to nowhere. It leads to nowhere at all. So this
You know what's scary? You said
werewolves,
your wife is a Taurus.
I
So
don't
am
know.
I.
She is. Oh, your wife? No, my wife's
I
probably
am.
what's December? Is that Capricorn? I don't know where she is actually.
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah,
I think
it's
she's a
Capricorn.
Capricorn, I think. So
Yeah, I'm a Taurus.
no, I couldn't think of what she was off the top of my head. But yeah, so that's just my hot take on Freemasonry. But yeah, that's all I got. We'll stop there.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching, everybody. You'll do your thing. Keep it
Keep it between the
between
points.
the points. See y'all next time. Bye.